Hi, this is Andy. The first of the 12 Agile principles says this: our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Now, clearly, we're not all in the software business, so it might be easy to write this principle off. But what I'm more interested in is the first part of the principle. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer because, that sounds reasonable, right? And of course we want to satisfy our customers, and yes, we would all likely agree it's our highest priority. But is it really? When it comes to customer service, a lot of us think of that as part of the domain of the hospitality industry or retail or anything customer or patient facing, and some of you have roles like that. But many of the rest of our listeners serve internal customers, and it's so easy to miss how important customer service is to what we do. So the premise for this episode is that we're all in the customer service business. And I can't think of anyone better to talk to us about that topic than Micah Solomon. Micah is one of the leading practitioners in this field, and he's the author of a new book entitled, "Can Your Customer Service Do This?" And the subtitle is "Create an Anticipatory Customer Experience that Builds Loyalty Forever." Micah is the guy who companies hire to improve their customer service. In this discussion with Micah, you're going to get a masterclass on what customer service is and some of the biggest myths about it. Micah will lay out what gold touch customer service means and how it relates even if you primarily serve internal customers. You'll learn about the difference between function and purpose and why it matters. And before we're done, you'll know what the service recovery paradox is and why you should have a say this, not this phrasebook. It's a discussion I've been waiting to share with you for a long time now. So before we start, do you know someone who's a student or perhaps recently graduated? I found there's a growing number of people who don't have clarity on where they're heading with their career. And many dread being asked the question, so what's your career plan? Because when it comes to their career, they have no freaking idea. And I bring this up because you've been hearing me talk about our new course entitled just that, No Freaking Idea, How to Navigate Career Uncertainty. It's a career guide specifically designed for people who are struggling with uncertainty about what they want to do, and you can help them get a head start by giving the course as a gift. I've been loving the feedback we've been getting from learners that it helps calm them down. They're realizing they don't have to have a perfect plan because it just doesn't exist. It helps them take the next step in an empowering way instead of just taking some job because it will make money. Learn more and give this course as a gift by going to nofreakingidea.courses. Thanks. Well, let's jump into today's discussion with Micah about his book, Can Your Customer Service Do This? Micah, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
What a treat. Thanks so much, Andy.
All right, so let's start with this. Before we get into ideas from your book, to build off of the Ritz-Carlton example, what's a wow story? Maybe even within the last couple of weeks, an example of a positive customer service experience you've had, and maybe an ow story, an example of one that's not so good.
Well, in the book, one of the ones I love is when the captain of Seabourn Cruise Line, one of their ships, contacted some deep divers, and they managed to get a woman's dropped wedding ring back. So that was pretty impressive.
Crazy, yeah.
Ouch. Okay, I'll tell you the worst customer service I've ever gotten. Now, it's a little subtle, so maybe not all your listeners are going to realize why this is so terrible. I was at a restaurant that fancied itself as being 5-star. I don't know, there was. There was some unusual ingredient mentioned in the menu. So I was at a restaurant that fancied itself as a 5-star restaurant or a 3-star Michelin restaurant, but I'm not sure they really were. So there was an ingredient on the menu that I didn't know what it was, and my wife, who's a gourmet, didn't know what it was either. So the waiter comes by, and I say, "What is this?" And he says, and I quote him, Andy, "I don't know." And I never saw him again the whole evening. So what should have happened, and if he'd read the book, what would have happened is he would say, oh, this is a chance to do something extra. This is what Micah calls a chance for gold touch customer service. He would find something out about it. he probably used what my mom still calls the Google, which is, it's funny if it's not your mom, and found out something himself, or even better, he would have found one of the chefs to come out and talk to me about it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And see, you just always think this way. Like you talk about this in the book. There's some evidence that you were cut out for this role, even at a young age, right? Would you tell us about the letter that your parents got about 11-year-old Micah when you had to stay at a sleepaway camp?
I might even be able to find the visual. Yes. All right. In the book, there is this letter from my camp counselors when I was, let's say I was 11. Now, it is reconstructed, but it is essentially what I remember from when I oversaw this. It was on my mom's desk.
Yeah.
So the letter says, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Solomon, we had the arduous pleasure of having your son, Micah, at summer camp. And most complaints we get from kids are along the lines of that song, hello, mudda, hello, fada, it's raining, it's too cold, it's too hot, the food tastes terrible." Micah's were much more sophisticated. They were more, there are two whistles on the waterfront and they're not quite in tune with each other, or the sloppy joes in the mess hall don't really go that well with the orange juice. We have enjoyed having Micah here, and we are also enjoying returning him to you for the off season.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, yeah. But you were destined at that moment to be in a career of helping. If only they knew you were helping them. Right? What are some myths or maybe misunderstandings about customer service?
Well, I hear things like customer service is just common sense, things like that, where customer service really is a mix of who's doing it, how well trained they are, and that's something we offer as customer service training. Perhaps their innate personality going into it, and all the systems and processes that are backing them up.
I feel like sometimes people think customer service is just saying yes all the time, or like giving stuff away. And in the project world, that just means scope creep. That's not necessarily, customer service isn't saying yes. That's a myth, right?
Well, in my book, I say the answer is yes. Now we need to find out what your question is. So in many consumer settings, that works great. An exception, of course, is when you have a contract and it spells out exactly what the customer is going to get. But you can always, unless it's unsafe or something, you can always say yes, and then here's what the price is going to be.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah, I would guess that most people listening to us would think their current level of customer service would at least be rung 2 of your ladder. So how do you like it to explain the rungs? And what I'm really interested in is, how can we objectively assess where we're at? Because we all think we're above average. So how could we objectively judge that?
Nah, don't bother. If you want to improve it, if you're listening to this, you're already ahead of literally billions of people on the planet, right? There's literally billions of people who are not going to listen to a podcast about customer service or read a book or talk with me. So let's assume that your customer service is level 2. And level 2 is it's satisfactory most of the time. So that's great. The problem is that the market's getting more and more commodified or commoditized. I'm never sure which one of those is better. So a customer, if you're doing just fine, they may leave you for a lower price. They may leave you because they forgot which website is yours and there's a copycat website. And they may leave you for no discernible reason at all. When you survey them, why'd you leave? They're like, I don't know. So they don't even fill out their response. So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, there's some ways. If you have an extraordinary product or like the most unbelievable location, that's possible, but most of us don't have that. So, and also, the whole COVID revolution has taken the idea of location as being important away in many of our businesses, right? I was just talking to a piano teacher, and I said the good news and the bad news, because he wasn't getting enough customers, enough students. I said the good news and the bad news is anyone can use any piano tuner piano instructor from anywhere literally in the world. So that's the good news, that's the bad news. You can sell your services to everyone. I mean, we still take piano from him and we don't live anywhere near him anymore. But the other problem is I could get like some hot shot other person in California or whatever to teach me. So anyway, we're assuming you're pretty good, but pretty good isn't good enough to differentiate yourself. I mean, unless you do it a million iterations, like Amazon. I think Amazon is better than pretty good, but let's say they gave only pretty good service. Still, you're doing it so many times, you settle in with them, and that is one way to do it. But the best way to do it is to improve your customer service, which you'll do by creating an attitude of we strive to provide anticipatory customer service.
Yeah, and that's that top rung. And, part of understanding that to me is this gold touch customer service that you and I have talked a little bit about. How could that idea, and like, what do you mean by that? But also, how could it relate to people whose customers are internal resources in their company?
So gold touch customer service is a secret until now of five-star hotels. And it is that whenever you have an interaction with a customer, if it's appropriate, you try to add something else. And the add-on, the gold touch can be tell extra. We were just talking about this morning, where don't just say, yeah, our Zoom call is on for such and such. Say, and if you don't have it handy, here's the link. That's the tell extra.
Yeah.
The do extra is more obvious. It's you provide more documentation. Well, that straddles both of these, right? You provide more documentation, you tie a ribbon around the product, whatever. You stay on the phone longer than your metrics in the call center would suggest that you do, and so forth. So how does this how does this relate to internal customer service? Not even business to business, but internal. My customer is another department, right? Well, the do extra, there's some things you can do. You can pick up that report from the copier and walk it over to the person, right? You can provide them with the links. You can provide them with the documentation. Now, don't go so crazy with this that you're giving them so many links that it's like that last scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? Where it's just too much information. You don't have to do that. Or the do extra, well, the walking, explaining it better, that's more of a tell extra. But there's a lot of things that you can do. The most important thing in internal customer service is the magic of thinking about someone in another department as being my customer. Once you reframe it like that, things work better. But there's a bunch of gurus out there who say it's the same as external customer service. Give me a break. It's similar, but some of the differences are you can be much more informal, right? That's a big difference. Another is that you have a company code of conduct. So if an external customer is like coming very close to cussing you out, you kind of still have to suck it up. But if they're one of your coworkers, which we're now branding a customer, maybe you don't have to take it. So there are a few things that are a little bit different.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's good. I like it. I'm thinking of situations where, maybe I look at the email, what they're asking, and I took that of what's the question behind the question? What are they really asking?
Oh, good one. Yeah. So that's another one of my principles, which I certainly didn't make up, but it's here's from the Ritz-Carlton's credo: strive to serve even the unexpressed wishes and even the unasked questions of our customers. So that's a great way to think of it.
Yeah. And sometimes just, it's so easy to put videos together these days that sometimes if I just do a 3-minute video instead of trying to put it in words, it feels like a do extra, right?
Oh no, that's a great one. And I even know a company, this is in my prior book, but a company that they showed me their amazing little video response to someone who could never become a customer because they're not in the serving area. But it was so sweet. I really loved it. And someday they'll work for a different company, a different context, and they'll hopefully call that company. Did you watch the TV show Jury Duty?
No, I haven't. Yeah, tell me about it.
It's so spectacular. But the whole thing is it's better than a hoax. But one person doesn't know that everyone else in the show are actors. And don't worry, he's not the defendant, so that would be
Yeah,
absolutely
right.
mean. But they get him to be on the jury and be the foreman. It's great. But the person who is the defendant, they want to show him getting the most incompetent counsel possible. And they have a video, and it looks like practically like stick figures. So videos can go one of several different ways.
Okay, you made me want to watch it, but
Totally.
that's funny. Yeah. Well, let's say someone listening to us is a project manager. Let's say, and one of her customers is her sponsors. So it's the person higher up in the organization who's funding the
Okay.
project. And you talk in the book about the difference between function and purpose. And our project manager's function is to deliver a project by a date. But how might an understanding of her purpose be helpful as she interacts with that sponsor?
Well, it's a very good question, but I'd rather move this to an external.
Sure.
No, it's actually internal customer service. Sorry. So the example in the book is actually 100% external. It's that there's a woman who's a landscaper. She's hired by the company, which is a little rare. There's a lot of contract stuff out there, but she is an employee of the company, and she's supposed to get 200 tulip bulbs in the ground before the morning is up. So she starts a little early, she's doing a good job, and then she notices a small little sinkhole, not one of these scary things, but like this size, in the path where when business starts, which is in an hour or so, walkers are going to be endangered too. So if she's only thinking about her function, she'll just keep planting the tulips. And if her company is only set up to celebrate functional work, then she'll get scolded if she takes time out from it. But if she works for a purpose-driven company and she knows what the purpose is, and let's say it's something very simple like to serve all our internal and external customers in the way they would like to be served, then just think about you're serving a friend. You wouldn't want to endanger them with that. So she takes off a little time, she finds some extra gravel, she fixes the hole.
I love that. The term that I appreciate in that section, Micah, is I think you called it elective efforts. And in
Right.
some ways, what we're trying to do is because she could have easily elected not to do that, right? I've got my numbers,
Perfect.
I got to do it.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. And a project manager might be, well, I could go above and beyond my way, but I'm too busy to do this. But what came to mind, and I just love your feedback on this, is this project manager, instead of just here's information about the project, could go above and beyond, like what questions you have about this, how would you like it formatted differently, and that might take extra effort, but it's elective effort to proactively try to help that sponsor stay engaged. Is that along the lines of what we're saying?
Absolutely. So you have this list of tasks, but in addition to that, and sometimes maybe in place of that, as in the example I just gave, if it serves your purpose of delighting the customer, then there's other things you can do. Okay, so elective efforts. This is kind of a cool and also kind of a funny thing. I posit that a boss cannot force out elective efforts from an employee, because those of us who are highly competent, which you want in an employee, but are totally disengaged, all of us, and I worked in some companies where this was true even of me, all of us can keep our performance just above that level where HR is going to be brought in, right? No one's ever going to know about it. But you're not going to get that. You're not going to get one of us to fix the sinkhole or tie a ribbon around a product unless they give, and that's the essential word, unless they give more.
Yeah, and creating what I appreciate about that section, it's almost like how do you create a culture that people are willing? So you're not, like you said, you're not badgering them into it. But one thing I took away from that section is celebrate. Yeah, like if somebody does give elective efforts, is celebrate that effort, and sometimes you get what you celebrate. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, which is a great example, not just for hotels, and most businesses I work with are not hotels. The thing is, I get calls saying, Micah, I want to turn my whatever it is, toothbrush manufacturing company into the Ritz-Carlton of toothbrush manufacturers. Or often, I want to turn my bank into the Ritz-Carlton of banking. Now, I will tell you, I have never gotten a call from a hotel saying we want to be the Citibank of hospitality.
Right.
So I think a lot of people do hold up the hospitality industry as an exemplar. So I think it's twice a week, the Ritz-Carlton celebrates these wow stories. And it's great. It shows employees how the management wants them to act, gives them some ideas, and also makes them think, if I did this, my work might be celebrated next week or the week afterwards.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's just a kind of a clever idea, and I like vocabulary matters. An elective effort. For some reason, I think that's a great way of saying it. And, I mean, it's just one example of many ideas in the book. But let's say our project manager wants to utilize some ideas from your recognition chapter, and so she decides to keep some notes in the contact record for each of her key stakeholders. Things like hobbies and favorite sports teams and vacation plans. And then, but let's say she meets with a stakeholder, and then she goes, "Hey, Mike, I heard that the Seattle Opera season includes X about Malcolm X. Have you heard much about it?" And so, asking a question. So now, here's my question. I think this is what you're talking about, like calling back to things like that. But also, let's say she has absolutely no interest in opera. Is it authentic, and is it still worth doing? So I'm interested in your thoughts.
Of course not. Then you have to ask her about the Seahawks or whatever.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, you're an opera guy, right? So you like the opera, right? And so if I asked you that, you would still feel good about that, right?
Yeah, but your odds are extremely low, right? So you better know that about me, right?
Yeah, well, I think I do, though, right? Isn't that true about you?
Yeah, I'm a fan of music, and oh my God, we went to La Traviata. It was just fantastic here not too long ago.
Inevitably there's going to be some sort of customer service failure, So tell us about the service recovery paradox, because I think it's just really, really interesting. And what should we keep in mind when we drop the ball with the customer?
Okay, so those are two different questions, and they're both ones I would love to address. The service recovery paradox is something that should make us not lose heart when something has gone wrong and a customer is upset. The service recovery paradox says that a customer who was unhappy and you turn them around successfully is more likely to become a loyal customer than someone who everything's gone smoothly. Why would that be? I think it's because you've bonded over this thing and they know that you're not just a fair weather friend. So that's nice. It's proven by science. Now, it is a weak correlation. If you were a hotel, you don't want to make a certain percentage of the door keys not work, right? There's a weak correlation. But if you're doing service recovery, you can take heart because odds are on your side. So service recovery, every great business has a framework for it. Marriott spells, I think, listen, and another company spells heart. The one I love the most, because it's
Starbucks.
so... you want to do all my lines?
Oh, no, sorry. No, just so memorable. You made it so memorable in the book,
So the one that I love so much that Andy actually remembered it, is Starbucks, because it spells latte, L-A-T-T-E, which is like a listen, acknowledge, and blah, blah, blah. The one I'm known for spells mama, M-A-M-A. And my promise is once you learn this and you rehearse this, when you actually have to use it with a live customer, you won't feel like falling on the floor and curling up in a fetal position and saying, "Mama, help me," because you will be able to work successfully with the customer in front of you.
Yeah. So what's something to keep in mind when we drop the ball? And you can take it from mama or whatever. We make a mistake in one way or the other.
Well, it's the first, the most important principle is probably the first one, which is make time to listen. So if someone calls in with a complaint, you don't want to make them even more upset because you didn't listen, because you were multitasking. That's probably the most important one. Acknowledge and or apologize is the second one. Acknowledge that their what happened wasn't good. If it's appropriate, apologize. Now, appropriate means the customer, as far as you can tell, thinks an apology is worthwhile, not necessarily that you think it. So then the meeting of minds is to work directly with the customer, try to figure out what they want, and marry that with what you can realistically do. And finally, act. So spell out what you're going to do for them and by when, and then make sure it gets done, and make sure the ball isn't dropped again if you had to delegate part of it.
Yeah. And to have it memorable like that, like I felt like some of the other ones, there's enough letters that I think I might trip over them. I think Mama keeps it simple. Yeah.
Mine used to be longer. It's exactly right. And it also spelled not very good mnemonic, arfafada.
Yeah. It was a good process, but just not clever enough to remember. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's funny.
I remember it though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's good, like you said. So let's say our project manager has a disagreement with a key stakeholder. In her mind, the customer is wrong. And maybe let's say, for example, they're not following the process that we agreed to for requesting change. And you make it clear in the book that words matter. I mean, you even recommend coming up with a say this, not this sort of phrase book. So what are some examples of ways she could make the situation worse with her phrasing and then maybe better?
So the worst thing is defensive language. Mm-hmm. You did this. No, I didn't. Yeah, this person on your staff was really impossible. I've worked with her for 18 years. There's no way that could be true. Mm-hmm. So those are defensive. Why do we use defensive language? My theory is that we all have siblings, or if we don't have siblings, we had peers at school. And this is how you learn to talk. You stole my scooter. No, I didn't. That's right. But if it ever worked with kids, it doesn't work once we're all grown-ass adults, right? And it especially doesn't work with customers. So avoid the defensive language. I gave a long list of defensive phrases and then ones you can use instead. But there are also some things that are more subtle that you don't mean anything bad by them. But in an external context, I recommend if someone thanks you, don't just say no problem or no worries, because they took the effort to thank you. So something acknowledging that, like you're welcome or my pleasure, I think is better. Internally, that's a little formal. So no worries may be okay internally. Other things that no one means anything bad by, but you need to get, this is right along the lines of what you're talking about. Well, you need to use the regular situation and the regular process for submitting this. Well, don't say that. Customers need to do diddly. They are the customer. So say in the future, it works really well if you go to blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, and for those listening, you have to read the book to get this, but there's a couple pages of things here. And so many of them, the negative ones, sound like project managers. Per my previous email, if you refer to our previous conversation, let me stop you right there. And that might be a little over the top, but I'm not going to argue with you, Micah. Right? Yeah,
I've heard that. Let me stop you right there. I'm not going to argue with it. I had an employee who was great, except for that one thing. When it started to get heated with a customer, she'd say, "I'm not going to argue with you," which at that point pretty much means she is doing what?
Arguing.
That's what I think. Let me stop you right there. That's a great one.
Yeah.
To avoid.
Oh, yeah, right. I agree. Yeah, 100%.
And I got that one the other day. I actually stopped working with this vendor because the employee sent me a letter that both said to reiterate and said per my previous email. If it's something from your previous email, for Pete's sake, just copy and paste it to the top of this email, right? And if they're not listening up to what are your standards, well, maybe you're not explaining it so well. Or you can do what Andy suggested and make an explainer video. That's a great thing too.
Micah, the truth is there's so many things I'd love to talk to you about, but let me just end with this one. We've got a lot of parents who listen to the podcast. What's something that parents could do to help develop a customer mindset, customer service mindset in their kids? Anything come to mind?
Okay, this is where, okay. That question that you asked, I don't think was the one I was expecting. I was expecting you to say to how to be better, give better customer service to their kids. And I have to oppose that one. When I work with schools, I'm like, of course, be nice to them and be open, but you are trying to raise a future, citizen of the world. So it's a little bit different.
Right.
So the question was how to turn them into,
just get this mindset. Some things we could get this customer service mindset into our kids, maybe.
Well, the answer is yes. Now, what's your question is a really good one because you start out trying to find a solution. Avoiding being defensive is a good one. There's a few of these that really apply, but don't count on your kid to buy my book. You're going to have to share it.
Right. That's probably a fair statement. But I think even being careful about the words that we say and how to recover from making mistakes, because sometimes kids just feel shame and they don't know how to recover. I mean,
yeah. So this is a whole different discussion, but. Some of these things that people throw around now are so ridiculous and mean. Oh, kids today are entitled. What the hell does that mean? They don't have to pull the plow by hand, right? Look how entitled you are, buddy, right? Look how much better our Macs are than I had one of the original ones. And they had this great, logo of a rainbow. It's great. So I bought a late model Mac. It wasn't this one, but similar. And I put on that sticker because I just thought it was so cute. I had some millennial come up and say, oh, is that what the early Macs looked like? And I'm like, oh my God. No, the early Macs, you had, if you want to install software, you had to put the floppy drive in and out. You guys are living the dream. But we are too as adults. So, love your kids. Never give up on your kids.
That's good. Well, for those listening, whether it's obvious or not, you're in the customer service business. And if you'd like a practical perspective on taking your team's customer service to the next level, I strongly recommend you get a copy of Micah Solomon's new book, Can Your Customer Service Do This? I'll put links to the book and the book's website in the show notes for this cast. So, Micah, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects.
Oh, thank you so much. And if you want to engage me, which that's a euphemism for hiring me, what I offer is customer service training on site, or I also create fantastic custom e-learning that can be used asynchronously. And I do consulting like we're talking about to see if you have a language problem or anything else.
Well, that's great. In fact, I'll put links to that. Thank you so much for that, Micah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Andy. What a treat.